for your kind words. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy to be speaking on this subject. And so I'll get right to how long do I have?
40 minutes.
What?
40 minutes, and we'll give you 5 minutes.
Okay. All right. I'm excited about this because I'm going to speak on God, prayer, and grace, all subjects that have changed my life. And I start with a little story. I was in the airport about, 10 years ago. And I was sitting over from the windows, and at the windows, there was a man standing, and he had in his arms a little boy. And the little guy was about, I'd say, 3 years old. And Papa wanted him to see what was on the tarmac. What was on the tarmac was an airplane, and they were loading stuff into the airplane. And he wanted him to look. And, the little guy, he kept looking back into the room, and Papa kept trying to get him to look. And at last, Papa just walked away with him because little guy he obviously didn't have the wherewithal to understand and to see. And I think that's kind of the way I have been with prayer and meditation and with God. God has poked me and, tried to get me to see certain things, and it has taken what it has taken. So I like this passage from the 12 and 12. Those of us who have come to make regular use of prayer would no more do without it than we would refuse food, air, or sunshine. And for the same reason, when we refuse air, light, or food, the body suffers. And when we turn away from meditation and prayer, we likewise deprive our minds, our emotions, and our intuition of vitally needed support. As the body can fail to its purpose for lack of nourishment, so can the soul. And this is the statement. We all need the light of God's reality, the nourishment of his strength, and the atmosphere of his grace. And he ends that piece with this statement. To an amazing extent, the facts of AA life confirm this ageless truth. It's amazing to me sometimes the kind of statements that we find anywhere, but particularly in the big book. So I'm asking you, what are the facts of AA life? Aren't they the facts that if we're alcoholic, at one time we led a life of debauchery, we led a life of that wasn't healthy. And what is the ageless truth? That our soul needs God. Simple. I'm putting it that way. That's the amazing extent that AA's message comes into the world. And what does it say? Look here. Here's the alcoholic who once was this way, and look at them now. How did they get that way? Because of this ageless truth. The soul needs God. And if I understand that, and if I start to live that way, then that's exactly what happens. The miracle is done. I know a minister who has AA meetings in the basement of his church. And he often says to me, I wish that what happens in the basement would happen upstairs. And what is he talking about? He's talking about seeing people transformed. You see, and what I really want to talk about today is I don't know how much time it takes. Each soul is unique, but I know this, that I have been transformed. I see the world different. I see prayer different. I see God different. I see grace different. And I don't know where you're at in that process, but I know it's taken a long time. It's in one sense, but what's a long time when you're dealing with the God of heaven and earth? So this business of change, I believe, is this business that we are seemingly transformed. I say seemingly because it's a big deal. You know, when I think back to, I'm sober now 49 and a half years. And when I think back to when I came in and I stopped drinking and so on, it seemed, if you didn't know better, you'd think I was transformed. I wasn't. It was part of the process of grace that works in our lives if we stay here. And being in AA then becomes much more than going to meetings. Going to meetings, I believe, is sacred. I think it's important. I think it's essential, but there has to be some work between the soul and God that changes the way we see. You know, I think if you take an example, you know, you can see this human world that we live in. You can see the world from the eyes that we've had to see the third dimension. But I think the transformation allows us to see it from the God view. And it's like, I think, looking at the world from the basement or from the first floor and going to the 30th floor and seeing the floor from the 30th floor. The view is altogether different. And that's what I think we're offered here if we keep on doing the work. But the book says no human power can make that happen. And that's why if you look and you see that you are transformed or somebody else has been transformed, that's not by a human power. It can't be, because we wouldn't know how to do that. So what does the book say? Our human resources, as marshaled by the will, were not sufficient. They failed utterly. And then later in the book, it says lack of power. That's our dilemma. And we had to find a power by which we could live. And I would say we had to find a power by which we could be transformed. And it had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously. And then comes the big question: where and how were we to find this power? And then, of course, if you know the book tells us that's what the book is about, to help you find the power. And then it goes on to say that will solve your problem. So there we go. What's my problem? It doesn't say problems. You know, the first time I really saw that, my sponsor, I had the same sponsor, you know, for 44 years. And the first time we read that, I read problems, and he made me read it again. I didn't know what I was reading. I was saying problems, and finally I got it. There's no S on that. I don't have a whole lot of problems. I have one, that I'm out of line with God. But I used to say to Chuck Chamberlain, because he tried to help me, and I'd say, no, I've got problems with men and money and sex and work and all kinds of things. He'd say, no, you have only one. He'd say, you think you're separate from God, and there's your problem. And when you get that right, you'll be fine. And, you know, he didn't explain that. He just said it. You know what? He was right. I used to think I was separate from everything, and I don't believe that anymore. So getting back to this, what is the one problem? Well, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about thirst, because I think that's something we all have, and we misunderstand it. St. Augustine, about 1600 years ago, wrote this. He said, thou hast made us for thyself, O God, and our hearts are restless until they rest in thee. And then let's hop ahead to about 1934 and 1935, 36. And what does Dr. Silkworth say? Same thing, uses different reference points. He says of us that we are restless, irritable, and discontent until we again experience the sense of ease and comfort. See, I think we all have this thirst. Think of what Carl Jung said. Carl Jung said he knew that we have a secret gnawing, Gnawing, a secret gnawing at the roots of our being. How many times have you heard people talk about the hole in their soul? How can there be a hole in their soul? There's no, the soul isn't an object, but it feels like a hole. It feels as if there's something missing. You know what it is? It's God consciousness. That's what we're here for. That's what St. Augustine said. And that's what Dr. Silkworth said. We need the sense of ease and comfort. And I love the other thing that Carl Jung said. He said he always knew that every alcoholic was seeking the spirit in every bottle of spirits. I doubt that any of us, when we bought our booze, said, hey, I'm seeking the spirit, so I'm going to take this bottle. But that's what we were seeking, that sense of ease and comfort. You know, I love that song Chris Christopherson years ago sang, because, you know, if we're using the wrong way to get the sense of ease and comfort, we're not going to make it because it's wrong. And that's why drinking takes us down. Chris Christopherson said this, poor wayfaring stranger, taking every wrong direction on his lonely way back home. See, mankind is looking for that connection with God. I can't see it any other way. Even one of the stories that the master told when he was here, the prodigal son, he took his inheritance and he lived riotously, and he wound up in the pig pen, eating the food that the pigs left over. It's the story of mankind's life. And when I think of the years, the first 40 years of my life that I lived in a pig pen, a mental, emotional pig pen, it was all about this. It was all about the thirst. See, that's what I'm starting with, because I think we all have this thirst. Unless you're dead, if you're alive, we have this thirst and we mistake it. And we think, oh, I need money. Money will solve it. Or a bigger house, or a fancy car, or better clothes. I went through this. We've all gone through this. We think something in the third dimension is going to give us that peace of mind that only the spirit and God consciousness can give us. And it takes us down because we misunderstand. Well, you know, I got the promotion. I still don't feel good. I got to drink some more. You see, I think that thirst in us, I'm aware of it. I still have it sometimes, but I know what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for something in the third dimension because I know now. I've had enough experience of pain. I know that if I'm going to grab for something in the human world, the problem with it also is that often to get that, you have to lie, you have to cheat, you have to do whatever. And, you know, we don't get, the book says God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. And people are struggling. You know, I want to say a word about that business of struggle, because I think that, you know, when you struggle, you know, I think of a rope and there are people on each side of the rope, kind of evenly matched. And then one side wins. When I am struggling with life, I'm struggling with God. And I tell you, that is not an even match. It will not end well. So to me, the whole thing is to find what it is that we're really looking for. And what I'm really looking for is God. So I really want to talk about three concepts: God, grace, and prayer. We're driven by thirst, but I think we do not understand what is happening. We don't understand who we are and why we are here. My goal was to feel good. My goal was to have that sense of ease and comfort, and how I was going to get it, the only way I found, because as a little girl, I cried and I asked God to fix my sister. And when it didn't happen, I became angry and I became sad and kind of disturbed. And then at 5, I took a drink and I had my solution. And that's what I chased, because when I took that drink, you see, it's kind of like this. When I asked God and said, my sister is crying, you have to help her, and she continued to cry. Well, I'm not getting an answer there. When I went and took a drink, I didn't take the drink because I thought the drink was going to solve anything. I took it because my daddy was drinking, not alcohol. He was just having a party. And I poured some into myself, and I got the sense of ease and comfort. And that's what I chased for the next 35 years. And I'm not going to go through a drunkalogue, but I'll tell you this. I needed to drink. And the other day I was in a department store, and I went past the perfume counter, and I was reminded there were bottles of Chanel No. 5. I used to drink that. If I was really in hard shape and couldn't get anything else, I'd go into your bedrooms and find your perfume and drink it. I can tell you that stuff goes down hard, but boy, you smell good. And then I also used to drink vanilla, because as I was in the convent, see, that's the other thing. Well, let's get on with this. Just think of what we lose through this process. But it's not really a loss. You know, Scott Peck puts it this way. He says, alcoholism is a blessing. Why? Because it forces us into community. I would change that. I think it forces us into finding God, or at least understanding that's the wrong solution. Drinking alcohol is not the correct solution. And if I pursue it, I get the results, the terrible results that I got. So the thing was, I knew nothing about third dimension and fourth dimension. I had no idea that we came in a 2-in-1 package. I had no idea really about grace and heaven and God. As far as I was concerned, I saw the old man up in the sky, and that really didn't work for me. And so the alcohol did. So that's what took me down. When I was about 3 years sober, I met Sandy Beach and we became friends. And I still remember he took me aside and he said, you don't seem to know this, but he said, we come in a 2-in-1 package. See, I think that as we grow in sobriety, I think it's necessary that we understand we are in a body, but I'm not here to pamper this body. I'm here to live in this body, because it's through the body that I learned something. What I learned through the body was this, that I need to feel good, and I will do whatever it takes. And that's how I was brought to the bottom, through pain, brought to the bottom that said, this doesn't work. That was my first surrender, if you will, my concession that I have to be different. And that happened to me on the morning of May the 20th, 1973. I told you, I drank for 35 years. And in that time, I spent 15 years in a convent. That's not smart when you're an alcoholic to go to a convent. And I went there because I'm a seeker. I'm a seeker today. I've been a seeker all my life because I've got that thirst, that in me which says, keep going, come on, there's more. Let's do more. That kind of living took me to 32 psych wards. It took me to 38 electroshock treatments. It took me to lots of therapy. It took me to the world around me saying, Mildred, you shouldn't drink, you shouldn't drink, you shouldn't drink. And I couldn't stop it. But the thing was, I didn't want to stop, because the only time that I had any kind of sense of peace and I liked life was when I was drinking. I married my psychiatrist. That's not too smart. He also was an alcoholic. And our marriage lasted about 8 months. I'm not a big marriage person, obviously. And I wound up on a park bench. See, we had the big house. We had the fancy lifestyle. All went down the tube. And I wound up on a park bench. I lived on a park bench like a tramp for 2 months. And the morning of May the 20th, 18, the RCMP took me off the park bench and took me to the psych ward. And on the 20th, the nurse said, we're discharging you. And that was bad, bad news. I had no home. I had no money. I had no friends. The family that I had been raised in, they did not want me. My mother said, the way you live, you're not welcome here. And so I did an inventory. How do you live? I looked at you, and it seemed to me that you knew how to live. I did not. And consequently, I made up my mind, I'm going to take my life. I'm done. I don't know how. I've tried everything I know, and it doesn't work. See, when I say I tried everything I know how, it was all in that third dimension. Get some more money, get some more education, get some more success, get this, get that, get the other. None of it was about transformation. And I understand today, bottom is a gift. And that morning, I just said, I can't do this. I don't know how. I've tried everything I know, so I'm out of here. And I asked the nurse to get my coat. And she went, and I had a spiritual experience. I can tell you, I was not looking for a spiritual experience. I did not believe in a spiritual experience. I did not know what could happen. And I know now, because I said to you, one of the things I want to talk about is God. See, I had the idea that there's a God up in the heavens. He sits there on his throne, and he's deciding who to reward and who to punish and all that kind of stuff. And if you want stuff, you put your order in and you beg and whine, and we call that prayer, and then see what happens. And that morning, I didn't beg and whine because I had no relationship with God. I was done with God. And I stood there, and compulsion was lifted. The obsession was lifted. And this person, this loser who had wound up on the park bench, was freed of compulsion, obsession. And I remember standing there saying, oh my God, I don't have to drink anymore. See, that was not my human world talking. My human world couldn't have known that. That was my soul talking. And I have to tell you, Bill Wilson talked frequently in his writings about soul-sized stuff. That was a soul-sized thing, because in 49 and a half years, I've never had a compulsion. I've never had the obsession. See, I think the one thing we need to understand, when God does these big things in us, it's for a purpose. He didn't take from me my crazy thoughts and my bad habits and all that stuff. But just think of the perfection of this. You know, if you were to say to me, Mildred, you're telling a lie, this couldn't have happened to you, I'm going to shoot you if you don't take it back, I'd say shoot me, because it really happened. Because I remember saying, I don't have to drink anymore, but I don't know how to live sober. You'll have to send me somebody. And honest to God, there was a rap on the door like that. How did that man come to the door just as I said those words? Like, I'm stupid if I don't get that there's something going on in life that's bigger than me and better than me and something that I can trust. And it's there for all of us, not just for me. We have different experiences. That's why the book says we share our experience, strength, and hope with each other. So you can learn what you can from my experience. I can learn from you, and that's how it works. You know what really impresses me is this, that I'll put it in this language, that God has given me all the time just what I need, not what I want. But I believe that this power wants us to grow. It wants us to wake up. That's what that thirst in us is. If we didn't have that thirst, we might sit like globs. But we've got this thirst and we think, I need this and I need that. And then we find out that doesn't answer it. You get the new house and then you got to have a bigger one. You get a promotion and then you need another one. Or it's never enough. It's never big enough. It's never nice enough. It's never showy enough. But this is different. This is the growing experience, the experiences we have. And I believe, as I look at my life, there have been tough times. See, because I believe that God doesn't do it for us. God does it through us. That's what the steps are about. You know, it doesn't say come into AA, stop drinking, sit on your hiney, don't have to do anything, and you'll be fine. You know what? You're going to be sucking on a bottle again if you do that. And somehow or other, the compulsion was lifted, and I went to Skid Row. And that was an absolutely perfect place for me to learn something. You know, I can't even tell you everything I learned on Skid Row, everything I learned through poverty. But you know what? Poverty was a gift. You know why? Because I had nobody in my life. And it was either work or die. I had no money and there was nobody. And I was raised in a world where you don't beg people for stuff. So I wasn't certainly going to go asking anybody. So I went and got a job. You know what I did the first year that I was sober? I swept the factory floor. Not very edifying, but it's what I did. Oh my God. 5 minutes. Where did all the time go talking, eh? I want to talk about God. See, the thing about that I have learned about God is this. God is good. God is love. God knows. God is everything. And our book says it. The day will come where you have to find that out, or you have to come and know that you need to learn that. I believe that today. And my life bears that out. So if that is the case, that changes prayer. And I believe that we are made out of that. If God is everything, then I'm made out of that. And if I am made out of that, I've got everything. It may not be manifested in my life, but it's available to me. I used to think of God like the great cosmic concierge, like kind of stupid if you think about it. I need a car, God deliver a car to me. God, I need this, God deliver. Doesn't work that way. I've got to change my energy. And when I'm in harmony with God, everything is okay. And that means then I pray different. You see, I used to ask, and it was, I need this, I want this. And I don't think that's prayer. Prayer isn't words. Think of the language we use. Did you say your prayers tonight? Prayer isn't words. Prayer is a relationship. Prayer is a relationship with God. It's a right relationship with God. And that's, again, what the steps are about. That's what that's why we've got a body. We relate to each other and we learn through the practice of goodness how our relationship with God grows. And then there's grace. See, I'm not sober because of AA. Now, you may think that's a heresy. I'm not. I'm sober because of God's grace. It was God's grace that took the compulsion and the obsession and led me to Alcoholics Anonymous, which is where the growth takes place. You see, because I think that, of course, AA is powerful. Don't get me wrong. But I'm not going to, I wasn't in AA when that happened. When I had the spiritual awakening, it was God in my soul. And that to me is grace, the grace that flows when we open the door. But I've got to open the door. If I keep insisting, I know what's right. That's what I want. And that, of course, means also we need to meditate. The book, after that passage that I chose, it says self-examination, prayer, and meditation work well together. I just want to say this, and then I'll close because, God, where the time went. I think it's really important to have a routine. And I think if you don't know how to do it, page 86, 87, and 88 are really powerful helps to forming a pattern. And with meditation, I think it's essential. And meditation doesn't mean that you have to sit for an hour. I try to tell my sponsees, do 1 minute, just sit quietly to get yourself to see that you don't have to be thinking all the time. And there are ways to meditate and so on. And I do want to say this. If there's anybody that wants to learn to meditate, if you get a couple of people together, call me. I'll take an afternoon and we can sit down and find out, because there's some wonderful ways. Some people use mantras. Some people sit in the silence. Some people use a sacred word to keep their mind, because that's when you really start to change. So I don't want to overstay my welcome. So there's one more thing I want to tell you. To me, it's the damnedest thing. I worked last week on making this talk. seeing what I want to talk about. I went to give a retreat in DeWitt, and I left my notes in DeWitt. How do you like that? 10 pages. And so I got home Sunday night, thought, oh my God. So I was tired, but I sat down and I started to write. I finished it kind of on Monday. I woke up this morning at 4:30 and I thought, just read it and see. And I didn't like it. And I did it again. So you got the newer, updated version. You know what? I think God is present in all of that, because what I'm talking about is it's got a different tone to it. I like what I said tonight because it's real. It's me. It's my life. It's really what I think about God and prayer and about how life changes. And that new life, I'm not perfect, but oh my goodness, life's very good. And if some of you have asked if you could have my phone number, will you ask Kuna? Kuna, would you give them my phone number, please, if they ask you? Okay. Thanks for having me.
Wow.